Assalamu alaikum, everybody. So today we learned passives. What does passive mean? First of all, it is basically um, something where you don't know who the doer is. So if I have the word sami'a in our example that we use, sami'a, it means he heard. Okay, sami'a means he heard. Now, if you wanted to say he was heard, how would you say it? And that's basically what the passive is. When you say he was heard, you don't know who's doing the action. You know, who is listening, or who's hearing, or who heard, but you know who was heard. Basically, done to. You know who was heard. So that is basically the study of passive, where you want to find out who, not who's doing the action, but who the action was done upon. So where you don't know who the doer is. Okay. So in our example, we already have sami'a, and let's draw the whole chart. We have sami'a, we have sami'a, and then sami'u, and we have already done this. Sami'at, of course, this is not there. Sami'ata, sami'na, and then you have sami'ta, sami'tuma. And I don't have to explain you what I'm doing right now. You of course know this is the past tense chart. Sami'tum, sami'tuma, sami'tum. Sami'ti, sami'tuma, sami'tunna. Sami'tu, sami'na. Now, what we want to do is make this into a passive. So if, let's say, sami'a could mean he heard, or it heard as well. It heard. But if we want to say it was heard, what would you do? The formula for past passive, okay, past passive, is basically u, ah. Okay. Now, what does that mean? So if in the case of, so you don't do anything to the last letter. In the sami'a, you know the last letter is ayn. You don't do anything to ayn. Don't touch it. You're just going to play around with the beginning and the middle. Now, the beginning is always going to be su. Su, okay? And, oh, sorry. E, okay? Sumi'a. Now, I said that the past tense passive formula is e, okay? E. Now, in this case, you basically don't do anything to the meme, because it's already at e. So if this is e sound, that's all I want to hear. E. Sumi'a. Don't do anything to the last letter. So sami'a became sumi'a, and this thing, then again, this one becomes sumi'a, sumi'u. Okay, sumi'at, sumi'ata, sumi'na, sumi'ta, sumi'tuma, sumi'tum, sumi'ti, sumi'tuma, sumi'tunna, sumi'tu, sumi'na. Sumi'tu means I was heard. Sumi'ti, you female was heard. Sumi'ta, you masculine were heard. Who heard you? I don't know, but you were heard, and that's what past passive is. Okay, and the formula is e. You change the first letter to u, and then don't do anything to the last letter, and make sure that now, since this one there's only one letter left that I have in the middle, make sure it has an e sound. E. Okay, that's what past passive is. So let's look at another example. And let me add a new layer. So remember, our formula is basically e. So the other one we heard was fataha. So let's do fataha. Fataha, fataha, fatahu, fatahat, فتحت فتحت فتحنا فتحت فتحتما فتحتم فتحتي فتحتما فتحتن فتحت فتح. Now, and you already know this is past tense chart of fataha. The formula is u u e. Now you take the first letter, make this u. Don't do anything to the last letter, and then I want to hear a kasra in here. So this one already has a fatha. Make sure that this becomes futiha. Okay, according to the ue formula. Futiha, futihu. It was open. Futihat. Some female object was open. Futihat. Okay. Futihata. How come I'm not changing this to e? Because we don't change the last letter. Now, what about ata? This ta is the last letter. No, ta is basically what's the indication of who's doing the action. But in the root letter, it's futiha. So you start with here, futiha. Don't do anything to ha, and make sure that the ta is basically getting the kasra. After that, you can just follow the same formula. Pretend I'm teaching you a new family, even though it's not a new family. It's fataha, yaftahu, and all you're doing is taking the fataha, making it to passive. And then once I give you futiha, you should be able to make the rest of the chart by saying futiha, futiha, futihu, futihat, futihata, futihna, and then it becomes futihta, futihtuma, futihtuma, futih. This becomes a dhamma, futihtum, and so on. And that's basically how you would make something passive. Now, what I'm going to do is just give you all the families the way that we have learned, and I'll give you how to make them into passive. So let's try that. Let's erase this. Okay. So I will be just giving you. So let's say if I gave you samia, I already gave you that. Samia becomes sumia. Sumia. Then I had give you fataha, which becomes futiha. Daraba. It was daraba. That becomes duriba. Okay. Then you had nasara. Of course, nasara becomes nusira. And then hasiba becomes husiba. Okay. Karuma becomes kurima. And now let's look at our bigger families. We had aslama, again following the same pattern of ui. It becomes uslima. Okay. Then we had allama. Let's do allama. Allama means he taught. Let's say he was taught. Okay, becomes ullima. Ullima. Then we have jahada. Jahada is a little, it becomes basically, you gotta have to say juhida. And because you have to say juhida, it's not gonna have an alif, it becomes a wow. Juhida. تعلم يتعلم that I taught you. تعلم becomes, because of the if you want to say passive, it becomes tu ru lima. Now, how come this didn't? It wasn't tu lima. It's tu lima. Because remember, the formula for past passive I taught you was u, and then e, e. So you're gonna give first letter u, second letter and basically the second last letter you look at it and that will get a kasra. Everything in between is gonna get a tu lima. So now let's look at اقترب. Okay, اقترب. That's what I had given you. اقترب. But now what we're gonna do is of course the alif will get a dhamma. Qaf with a sukoon stays the same. This also gets a dhamma. And then we know that we don't want this fatha, right? It has to be a kasra according to our formula over here. So let's do uqturiba. Okay, let's do istaghfara. We had istaghfara. Istaghfara. That becomes ustugh, and then the second last letter gets a kasra. Ustughfira. The formula is u-u-e. Ustughfira. Ignore the sukoons. Okay? Ustughfira. Then inqalaba yanqalibu. If it had a passive, just for the practicing of our families here, to make something passive. If it was in qalaba, okay? But if I had to make that into a passive, it would be, again, that's assuming that it had a passive, then it will be unquliba. And then we had takathara. And of course, so let me just erase some of this stuff. There's a lot going on right now. But you have most of the families. And I think we just have one more left. And we'll just try that as well. Again, passive sound is oo, e. Just, if you remember that, you should be in good shape. Oo, e. And let me change the color over here. So basically, right here. Oo, e is past passive. And we had one more. So we had takathara. Takathara. Let me write that down. Takathara. And again, if you wanted to follow the sound of this becomes oo, this becomes oo, and this becomes e. Now you can say oo and then alif sound. You're not gonna say tukuathira, right? So this of course becomes tuku thira. Here's the passive of takathara becomes tuku thira. Okay, the formula is u e. Simple as that. And take out this tuku thira. And that's it. That's your past passive. And in the next video, we'll be making present passive, inshallah. Jazakallah khair.